Oh, hold on a second, I'll just go here. So today we're going to have a way-seeking mind talk, and this is a tradition in our Soto lineage for Sangha members who have been practicing for a fair while, or who have recently done Jukai ceremony, received the precepts, which 3 of our Sangha members did a couple of weeks ago. But Tony did Jukai many years ago with Sabana in Sydney. So we'll hear about that. And what's nice about way-seeking mind talks is in Sangha, we kind of get to know each other in terms of our character and our sort of our qualities, but we often don't get to know much about the narrative of our lives, which is kind of good. It's kind of nice. We kind of bypass the details in Sangha and just get to know each other in sort of the quality of who we are. But it is really good to hear the stories of people's lives every now and then. So this is one of those every now and then moments. So I'll turn it across to Tony.
Sure.
There we go.
Hello, firstly. I grew up in a small town called Barham in the Riverina on the Victorian-New South Wales border. A town of 1,200 people where my mother was born there and died, and there was a real sense of community there. I went to Sunday school, and then I was sent to a boarding school, a church boarding school in Albury. And in terms of religion, I sort of respected the moral and ethical teachings of Christianity. And, I saw Christians good Christians doing good things, and I certainly respected that, but I didn't really think much of it. It seemed just like a little bit like a fairy tale. So I didn't have much interest in anything spiritual or anything like that. And I went to the University of New South Wales, and there was a Buddhist society, particularly for all the foreign students from Southeast Asia. And I never heard much about Buddhists being in wars, so I thought I should go along to just have a listen, which I did. And they used to have teachers from the various traditions around Sydney come along. And the way they described the world seemed to just make sense to me. I never heard it being explained that way in some cases, like the nature of desire. You get a new watch and you go, hey, have you got a new watch? What do you reckon? It's pretty good, isn't it? And then after 3 or 4 weeks, it's the same old watch. And I remember hearing that and going, oh yeah, that's right, isn't it? Sort of thing. And another teacher talked about an apple and eating an apple. And when does the apple stop becoming an apple? And when does it become you? And I went, oh. So I started, reading more about Buddhism. I went to the talks recently, and I joined the Sydney Zen group, which Sabana leads now, a part of the Diamond Sangha. And I think I joined that because Zen had had all those crazy stories, and they had the best frocks, the black robes, and it seemed relatively free of ritual. I realised I got that wrong later on, but and I went on retreats with them, 7-day session retreats. They were quite hard for me. My mind does not naturally settle and go quiet. It wanders off, and usually it comes back. There's always someone watching, and so it never wanders off too far. But they were quite hard. The first one was I had to deal with boredom, I remember. The second one, the main theme was pain, and the third one was peace, and that. And then I remember I used to read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, especially at night before I went to bed. I found it very soothing, although I didn't really understand a lot of what it said. I was puzzled by those sayings like to go 1 mile east is to go 1 mile west, or as Suzuki Roshi or Shunryu Suzuki said to his students once, you're perfect just as you are, and you can do with a little improvement, and things as it is. But yes, and then I moved to Darwin for work, and I came to Canberra, so I sort of dropped my interest in Buddhism until about 2007, when I was in Canberra. and I went walking in Kakadu, and the guide had a book there by Joko Beck. It comes across to me as a little bit like the hellfire and brimstone of Zen Buddhism. But I remember reading the book and I thought, oh yeah, there really is something to this, isn't it? I should get back into it. So I joined what's now the Black Mountain Zen group here in Canberra, led by Jeff Ward, and I went and did a few more retreats with the Sydney Zen Centre and Sabana. And there was one where there was a Jukai ceremony, and Sabana said to people, anybody can do this if you feel committed to it. And so I said, yes, I'll do that. And I sewed this up, and then the next retreat I took Jukai. And an interesting trivia fact is, I remember I was sitting on that retreat, I sat next to Lindy Lee, the sculptor, whose $8 million work is now in front of the National Gallery, a big silver Oribus, and that. And after that, I realised that I realised, I had a couple of moments that made me realise that I should take this more seriously. I had a girlfriend called Liz, and she had a cat. I wasn't a cat person back then, and the cat would get under our bed just as we were about to go to sleep, and it would be my job to get the cat out. Otherwise, it would jump on the bed at 3:30 in the morning and wake us up. And every night, this tape ran through my head. I'd put my head underneath the bed, reach out for the cat. I would swipe at the cat would swipe back at me, and there was this tape that ran, and it was something like this: bloody cat, I'm not even a cat person. How come it's my job to take the cat out? It should be Liz's. Come here, you stupid cat. And then one night I put my head underneath the bed, and suddenly this thought dropped into my head, and it said, if you want Liz, you get the cat. And I put my hands in gently like that. The cat stayed there. I picked the cat up, took it outside, and I must have said to myself, "Whoa," sort of thing. And another. I used to help out at a men's crisis accommodation centre, and Samaritan House in Hackett, and they asked me to take a guy to ANZ Village, and I took him there, and I got out of the van, and there was an old guy there, and he was unloading stuff out of his car, and he just yelled at me, and he said, "Here, give us a hand, will ya?" And I just calmly looked at him and said, "Yeah, hang on, mate, I've just got to sort this one out." Whereas in the past, I would have done it reluctantly, or I would have told him, piss off, sort of thing. But I was sort of in control of the moment, non-reactive, and that, which wasn't what I would normally do. And I also heard about Ekai Kuramutsu, who leads one of his groups is also here in Canberra, down in Melbourne. So I went on retreats with Ekai, where I met Mark, and because things had started to change, Ekai sort of made a recommendation for me, signed it for me to go to the San Francisco Zen Center's monastery, Tassajara, for 3 months, and that was big. It was I describe it as like joining the Marines, except no one yells at you apart from your own head. The whole world turns inward to that little valley at the end of it's an hour drive sort of thing, and so the 60 people there, and it's a life governed by bells, like a bell to get up at 3:50, a bell at 4:05 to let you know you need to be getting organised and getting down to the Zendo at 4:12, another bell at 4:17, I think it is, you need to be inside the Zendo, 4:20, sitting formally starts, and so on, another 50 minutes, and another bell to get up, and that. And I didn't realise at the time, but I had a fair bit of anxiety. So I'd come up with this schedule in my mind of things I had to do to make sure I was going to get through this. I had to get up in the morning, and I'd have to have a cup of tea, and at lunchtime I'd have to do a few push-ups, and I couldn't eat too much because that would mean I'd fall asleep. And I went into Dokusan after about 5 or 6 weeks with the teacher there, and you go into the semi-darkness, and the teacher was a big man. His name was Steve Stuckey, who's just, he's passed away now. And I said to him, "G'day," because he liked that, being Australian. He said, "G'day," and I said to him, "How come if we're all part of things, how come I'm lonely and a bit homesick?" And he just said to me, "What's that thought?" And I went, "Oh, rightio." And I asked him a couple of more questions, and then I walked, and we finished Dokusan, and I walked out, and I still remember walking across the footbridge at Tassajara, and suddenly this thought struck me. It was like, there's nothing to worry about. And for 2 or 3 days afterwards, I was imbued by this sense of energy, that sort of relief. I was sitting into the night, whereas I never did that before, because I had to have them sleep, and slowly, and from that day onward, the way I moved in the world particularly changed, and it's sort of, it's unfolded from then onwards. And so compared to me previously, I move with like any positive character trait, I'm more that way. So I'm more courageous, less fearful, more caring, more centered, less reactionary. So it obviously had a big effect on me. I came back to Canberra, and I suppose a good way to describe it is like Suzuki Roshi describes it. It's like walking in the fog. You don't know you're getting wet. So all those changes have slowly unfolded. You probably quite rightly say you've got a long way to go yet, Tony, and I would say yes. But also on that retreat, I met Kokio, who's Nettie's teacher, who's this wonderful combination of earnestness and devotion, but also very relaxed. And he became the teacher of the Santa Cruz Zen Center, where I actually met Nettie, and I went over for a few session retreats with him, because I suppose ever since that time, to stop practicing Buddhism would just be wrong. It has been so beneficial in my life. And in 2015, I went back to Tassajara for another 3 months, where I had the super cushy job, the best job you could have there, I reckon. I was in charge of cleaning the men's side of the hot springs, like a Japanese bath sort of thing. And it's the only job where I've ever had where I had a legitimate excuse to go nude, to jump into the bath, because that's what you do in a Japanese bath. You go nude and clean it, sort of thing. So that was more of a deepening 3 months, perhaps, rather than a certain one that happened where there was a breakthrough. It was quite, and because of the nature of my mind, it was often, I'd often count down the weeks and stuff like that to there, because I had to really, I learnt to retrain to just stop being so anxious, so particularly on that one, and about how much further, and just go with the flow a bit more. But as I said, it was a deepening thing. And then in about 2017, after while at Tassajara, I read a book which had a lot of impact on me, by Ajahn Chah, the Thai teacher. And so I went on retreats went over to WA and went on retreats with his student, Ajahn Brahm, who's a bit of an internet rock star in terms of Buddhism. I think one of his talks has had over 1 million hits, and he's also the happiest person I have ever met in my life. He sort of hams it up for talks, and you go, it's a bit of an act, but then you talk to him outside of that and you go, oh no, it's not an act. He's always like that, always like this sort of thing. Going there brought a lot of joy into my practice that had probably been missing he talks about it just being like, relax, you're at the beach, chillax, and he'd say, you know, if you don't, unlike the sort of militaristic Zen sort of thing, where someone actually, you know, came in. I slept through lunch once at Tassajara, and someone, you know, one of the Doans came knocking on my door looking for me, and I was quite embarrassed, but he was quite excited because he said, oh, I've got a live one. Usually everyone's got a legitimate excuse for not being there, sort of thing. But with Ajahn Brahm, he just turn up. You don't have to turn up at any time. He doesn't, I don't think he believes that a happy mind is a settled mind which will lead to deeper meditation and that. So yeah, that's been very beneficial, and as I indicated in the words I sent out, along the way there has been these odd aha moments, and they're quite odd sort of thing. There was the one with the cat, and then there was the one I was driving to when I was driving to meditation on a Wednesday night with the Black Mountain Zen group. They used to sit up just up the road there in the Thai temple, and I'm driving along, and for some reason I had this sudden urge to eat KFC, and so I'm driving along, and this battle of thoughts was going on in my head, like, why do I have to go to Zen? I go every Wednesday. I want KFC. I feel like some chicken. No, why do I have to do this? This is look. I think I'm going to turn around the car and go to Dixon. And suddenly it was just like in the cartoons, like an anvil dropped onto the ground, and it said, and the words came from God that said, "This is not me." And then everything just went quiet, and I went to meditate it, and it was all very quiet and peaceful, like that, which was one of my. And then another time, I used to have a small plane, and I'd fly out to see my mum, and right near the airfield, Kerang airfield, there was a railway line, and just as I was just about to step onto the wing of the plane and get into the plane, a train came past, and it went across the crossing, and it whistled. And I looked up, and this thought just dropped into my head, and it said, "The train is me." And then my reaction was just this gentle smile, and it was like, of course it's me. As of course. And I stepped up onto the wing, and I closed the door of the plane and just took off. And yeah, it's just like, wow. So there's been, there's a philosophy behind Buddhism, and for a long time my practice was trying to figure these things out, trying to figure out what it means by to go 1 mile east is to go 1 mile west. And poor Ekai, I would quiz him about all these things when we went into Dokusan sort of thing, and but now my practice it's just become more and more simple. It's just just being here. Like, one of the things I try and, probably the most common mantra I say to myself these days is that I'll never walk this way again, just to be here. And that, so that's my talk, and I very much welcome questions as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. So wonderful. I'm going to plug in this microphone so that it'll pick up. We'll hope that this works.
Just checking. Can you hear us, Margaret? And Russ, can you hear?
Just barely. It's pretty echoey and not very loud.
Okay. Well, I don't think we can stop the echo. The echo seems to be how it is.
It just got louder. That's much better. Thank you.
Probably because I spoke up. So if people in the Zendo could remember the people online and speak up, even though we get tempted to want to talk quietly. Any comments or questions for Tony?
Tony, have you ever been struck by the
Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I don't know what it does these days, but the Diamond Sling Group, the Sydney Zen Centre, used to do that, and you would ask, they wouldn't do it without you knowing. So there was, I don't know, what's
Tanto.
the tanto, walk around the room, and you'd hear she was coming, and you would bow like that, and they would whack you. It was actually partly, it doesn't really hurt. It's just like a wake up thing. So, and it's, they use the flat of the stick rather than the pointy end. So, yeah, I've been struck by it, and yeah, I don't know, So it's never unexpected, and it's just, I don't know. It's just like trying to, just like, as if you pinched your skin trying to wake up or something or other. Sometimes get a bit of shoulder pain.
When you were flying, did you find that almost sort of enhanced your practice as you were just being sort of removed?
No, that's an interesting question. No, it didn't. But my practice enhanced my ease of being a pilot. Because you get so good at watching yourself, at times things that get a little bit tense, thunderstorms around, or even the weather just gets darker and darker. I feel that tenseness, and after as my practice developed, I was much better at watching and going, I'm a little bit nervous, sort of thing, and that's okay. This is just a little bit of nerves, sort of thing. So you wouldn't be, so I wouldn't be driven by it, which perhaps I would have been a bit more when I was first started flying. Yeah.
What are your thoughts now about 1 mile east is the same as 1 mile west?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please, Nettie? It was hard to understand what you said.
I was asking Tony, what does he think now about the line from Suzuki Roshi that 1 mile east is the same as 1 mile west?
Thank you.
I suppose, well, of course, you're always here.
That's right. East, west, here. And the other thing I really noticed about your talk is it really, your talk really highlights that it's about mind. That things happen in our life, but how we think about them is what's transformative, not rearranging the deck chairs and the Titanic. Like that's not the thing. And you sort of gave quite a few examples of how suddenly a new thought arrived, and that's what changed, not circumstances. It's your attitude towards them. So, yeah.
Yes. Arjun Brahman says that you can't change the circumstances, but you can change how you think about them. And that's probably another big theme in my life, in my Buddhist practice at the moment, being happy to be there. And I had in my notes that I skipped over, but Arjun Brahman's got a book called, in America, I think it's Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung. In Australia, it's Opening the Door of Your Heart, and it's 101 Buddhist stories. And at times in my life, most recently, I had particularly something that shocked me. I've picked up that book and found comfort in how I could think about these things and how I process them. Even though I know the stories pretty much all by heart, I still read one of those stories 3 times, and my resilience in front of that shock has surprised me, and I think that's a lot due to the practice in the past, but it's also just due to being able to reframe it along the lines of one of those stories in the book.
And I think also, strangely enough, when we don't try and change the circumstances but focus more on changing our mind, we then actually do have a positive influence on the circumstances often.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah.
But often, so it's kind of yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the really nice talk. And I think one thing I take away from it is like, if you hear someone tell their life story, they'll often focus on context, I guess, or the circumstance and the big transformational things that happen to them from outside. But it seemed like your way-seeking mind talk, the most significant events were sometimes picking up your girlfriend's cat from under the and very small moments and stuff like that. So I think for me, a takeaway would be sort of being humble about what's significant, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose as I said, Buddhism hasn't changed maybe it hasn't changed. The better description of rather than it's changed my life is it's changed the way I move in the world, sort of thing. Yeah.
And just after you after all kind of Buddhism related events, do you have any would you be able to advise to beginners how to go through the difficulties in their practices? Because being beginner is a little bit difficult. And as you were describing, you had some unease, and you approach your practices with the kind of not very helpful attitude, like a scheduling and stuff.
I think that having the right attitude. I think sometimes Zen is someone described it once as like learning to swim by diving in the deep end can be a bit austere at times. So it is quite hard. I think if I had to say something, it would be to find the joy in your practice. Listen to Ajahn Brahm talk about relax, you're at the beach, chillax, relax to the max. He says those things. and you go, if you watch him talk about that, or you hang around him, he said, my teacher brainwashed me, and I'm brainwashing you. And he says it in this way, sort of thing, and that's the effect that he has had on me, and a good teacher should have on you, to get across that joy rather than sit there and just go through it, sort of thing, and to be happy. It's just pain in the knee again. Oh, here we go. I'm getting really anxious. I wish Mark would ring the bloody bell. That's just Mark to ring the bell again. Sort of thing. So that self-awareness of what's going on, and the sort of being able to laugh and smile at it, and just relax, and just find the joy, and know that's what. It's like brainwashing. You're brainwashing yourself, but plenty of other people have done it before. There's no harm in making yourself happy, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
It's kind of a thought in my head, but Zen is like it's the brutalism of architecture. It's austere, and it's clean. We were saying that we're not so much the ritual, though. That's not quite true. But like the Scandi of Buddhist practice. It's and that to me appealed to me, and obviously that hadn't appealed to you. But I mean, hanging around the Tibetans for a while, you realise what rituals are about.
Yeah. Mr. Mark.
One of the things I got from your talk was, I guess, this real sense of just it feels like you've come across this very intuitive awareness of the lack of difference between anything. The train is me, or there's no difference between going to KFC or going to meditation, right? At the end of the day, it's all kind of the same thing, and so you may as well go to meditation. Because, you want to go to KFC? Sure. Go to meditation? Sure. You may as well go to meditation. Right? I wonder, as you continue to practice, and I guess you've had those moments of insight that we're describing. Like, how is that? How is that maintained? How is that, are you able to see that lack of difference that I hear in what you're saying, kind of on a more day-to-day level, or do you just drift off and then you've got to kind of realize it again and drift off and realize it again?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is seeing the world in two ways. Shibuya Suzuki, in Zen mind, beginner's mind, talks about a Japanese expression. It's like you've got a board on your shoulder, sitting on your shoulder, and you only see the world one way or the other way, the absolute and the relative. And yes, there is, in the absolute sense, there is no difference between going to KFC and meditating, but in the relative sense, there's practice that is more skillful than other practices, and being able to so you have, I suppose that's the reality, that's the way things are as far as I see, and I still see the world mostly in relative terms, but I suppose I know that, and it's probably just become a little bit, what's the point of knowing that, of seeing the world in absolute terms? I think it makes you more, it makes you less reactive to things, more accepting of things, more able to let go, and that. So so it's been it's seeing the world in absolute, understanding that, and the idea with that, with popping into my head as it did with that train, is that it makes, it's not just a nice philosophical thing, and you can't see the world in absolute all the time. It's just got to be embodied, and I suppose once you understand it philosophically, it's easier to embody it. And obviously, when that thought popped into my head, that was a symbol, a sign that it has become more embodied into me. I hope that answers your question.
Could I just add that probably zazen helps maintain?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. But certainly the centeredness. I notice if I haven't been meditating for a while, I can just get a bit ratty, a bit more reactive, a little bit more indulgent, pushed around by things, and that. So yes. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And I hope you could hear some of that online, Margaret and Russ. We're just going to do some chanting and 3 bows to him.